Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time around, we're going to really dig into Ansible.
Yeah.
Especially for those of you out there looking to, really up your enterprise game.
Right.
And automate those networks right, those sprawling networks that everyone's got to deal with.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think the key thing here is, our listeners, they want the power.
Yeah.
But they don't necessarily want to have to become, coding gurus.
Exactly. You want to be effective without,
Right.
becoming a coder.
Exactly. So that's where we come in.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're taking all these insights from Mastering Ansible, 4th edition.
Okay.
And just so you know, the author, James Freeman, he's been in the thick of it, deploying Ansible in the real world. So this is all about practical application. It's not just theory.
I like it, yeah. And that's what we're all about here, right? Getting down to the nitty-gritty.
Exactly.
Okay, so one of the first things that really jumped out at me reading through this is it says that Ansible can run on basically anything with Python.
Yeah.
I'm thinking my old Windows laptop could probably handle this thing.
Probably. Yeah.
That seems like a big deal, right? That kind of flexibility.
It's huge. This isn't some tool that's just locked into one specific operating system.
Sure.
We're talking your laptop, servers, even something as small as a Raspberry Pi. You can run Ansible on it.
Wow.
And what's really cool about this is it means your teams can actually work together, regardless of if they're using Windows or Linux or whatever.
Right. No more of those Linux versus Windows battles.
Exactly.
Just to even get automation off the ground, right?
It just works.
I like it. Okay, so the book keeps using this term idempotency.
Right.
It sounds a little technical.
Yeah.
But the author seems to think it's a pretty big deal, especially when we're talking about these big enterprise deployments, right? Where you've got hundreds of servers potentially.
Right. And idempotency, just to put it simply, means you can run an Ansible playbook over and over. And it will only make changes if they're actually needed. So think of it like, setting your thermostat.
Okay.
You want it at 70 degrees. It's only going to turn on the AC if it's not already 70 degrees.
Okay. Yeah.
So you're not constantly blasting the AC when you don't need to.
Gotcha.
And in an enterprise, that's huge because it means less risk. You're not going to accidentally, blow away your entire network configuration.
Right. No more nuking it from orbit just because you accidentally ran a script twice.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's reassuring. All right, let's switch gears a bit. Something I know a lot of our listeners are dealing with, scaling Ansible for the enterprise. Because you can start small, but things can get
out of hand.
Yeah, a little crazy.
For sure.
The book mentions this platform, AWX, and it seems like, I don't know, Ansible's more mature, older sibling or something.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Because when you've got dozens, hundreds of servers, right, if everyone's just doing their own thing with Ansible, it can get messy fast. You need some way to bring it all together.
Right, because otherwise it's just like the Wild West of automation scripts.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone doing their own thing. It's chaos.
Chaos. And that's what AWX is designed to solve. It's a centralized place to manage all your playbooks.
Okay.
You can schedule when those playbooks run.
Right.
Keep track of who made what changes.
Okay.
Even control who has access to what.
So it's like mission control for your automation.
That's a great way to put it.
All right, so this AWX thing.
Yeah.
It's not just some standalone thing, right?
Yeah.
It can actually integrate with other tools.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That you'd find in a bigger company.
Right.
I see some mentions of CI/CD pipelines here.
Yeah.
Which, if you're not familiar, that's a big deal in the software development world.
Huge. Yep.
And if we can tie these two worlds together, that seems really powerful.
Oh, it is. Well, just picture this. A developer pushes new code, right?
Okay.
To the CI/CD pipeline, it grabs that code, it runs tests, and if everything checks out, it automatically kicks off an AWX job, which then deploys that code to a staging environment.
So you're saying I could go from a developer hitting save on their code to that code being deployed.
That's it.
With almost no human intervention.
You got it. Minimal manual work, less room for human error. It's a win-win.
So we're talking a developer pushes code, Ansible takes care of the rest.
It's like an automated orchestra conductor.
I like it.
Making sure all the pieces work together.
Okay, that's a powerful image.
And the best part, AWX keeps a log of everything. Every change, every action.
Okay.
So if something goes wrong, you can easily track down what happened. Plus, it helps with compliance. Those pesky audits.
Right. Transparency and accountability. Those are words that make any CIO happy.
Music to their ears.
Okay, let's shift gears just a bit here. Talk about another area where Ansible really shines.
Okay, yeah.
Network automation.
Right.
I'll admit, I used to think of network automation as this like...
black magic.
Yeah, almost like this black art involving lots of late nights, cryptic commands.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe a few sacrifices to the network gods.
You got to appease the gods, right?
For good measure.
Of course.
But it seems like Ansible maybe makes it a little bit easier.
A lot easier. I mean, you're right. It used to be a very manual, very specialized process.
Yeah.
But Ansible, what it does is it gives you this common framework,
okay,
almost like a shared language,
okay,
to manage all these different devices,
right,
from Cisco to Juniper, you name it. Ansible can probably handle it.
So it's like the universal translator for networks. That's
a great way to think about it.
Okay.
You define your configurations once,
right,
and Ansible handles the rest.
And we get all those benefits we've been talking about, like idempotency.
Absolutely. Idempotency, audit trails.
Right.
Integration with other tools.
Okay, so Ansible's got us covered.
We're covered.
At least when it comes to taming these networks, right?
Taming the wild network.
Exactly. So we're really starting to see how Ansible can wrangle even the most, unruly networks.
Oh, for sure.
But what really caught my eye was how it can be used to spin up entire cloud infrastructures.
Right.
The book uses OpenStack as an example.
Yeah.
Which, if I'm understanding this correctly, it's like building your own little private cloud platform.
That's right. OpenStack gives you the tools to build a cloud on your own terms.
Okay.
And with Ansible, you can manage those servers, configurations, the whole 9 yards.
Okay.
So it streamlines everything.
It makes sense for getting those initial servers, up and running.
Right.
But how do you actually get Ansible to then talk to those servers? Like, to configure them further.
Okay, so
it's not like you could just SSH into, like, a freshly baked cloud instance.
Well, you can't just, dive right in.
Right, exactly.
There's a little magic happening behind the scenes, and it's called dynamic inventory.
Dynamic inventory.
Yeah, so basically, Ansible's keeping track of all your devices, right? And it can update that list on the fly. As those new servers pop up in OpenStack,
yeah.
Ansible's like, hey, I see those. I can manage those too.
So it's like Ansible's got this, like, radar constantly scanning for new devices to bring under its,
it's like
automation control.
It's always watching.
Okay.
Which is perfect for the cloud, right? Things are changing all the time.
Yes, super dynamic.
Exactly. And it's not just about setting them up. You can manage the entire life cycle of your servers with Ansible. Need to update something?
Okay.
Easy. Deploy a new application. No problem.
Okay.
Retire an old server.
Okay.
Ansible can handle that too.
Yeah.
It's like having a Swiss Army knife for your cloud.
So we're talking like full-blown infrastructure orchestration here.
That's it.
This isn't just like automating, a couple tasks here and there. It's like the whole process.
The whole shebang.
Start to finish.
Exactly.
That's impressive. And from what I'm gathering here, it's not just OpenStack.
Right.
What about other cloud platforms like, say, Microsoft Azure?
Ansible can handle Azure too, absolutely. Yeah. The principles are really similar. You use the Azure-specific Ansible modules.
Okay.
You tell it what you want your servers to look like,
right,
and Ansible just takes it from there.
That's amazing. So it sounds like Ansible can automate almost anything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, are there limitations here? What can it do?
Well, I wouldn't say there's nothing it can't do. Ansible is super versatile.
Right.
But of course, every now and then you'll bump into a tricky situation, some weird edge case.
Okay.
But here's the beauty of it. You can extend Ansible.
Yeah.
You can write your own custom modules
to
handle those really specific scenarios.
So if I've got like some legacy system or something that's, internal to our company that needs a little automation love, I'm not just out of luck.
Not at all. Ansible's got you covered.
Okay, good to know.
The book actually has a whole section on extending Ansible.
Oh, wow.
Writing your own custom modules, plugins, even like dynamic inventory scripts. You can connect it to almost anything you can imagine.
That's the beauty of open source, right? You hit a wall, you could just, get your hands dirty and figure out a way around it.
They're not limited. You can tinker, experiment, make it your own. It's great.
All right, so we've talked about cloud provisioning.
Right.
But the book also dives into this whole world of containers and Docker.
Yeah, containers are huge these days.
They are, yeah. Docker, containers, those are definitely buzzwords I keep hearing.
For sure.
But to be honest, I haven't fully wrapped my head around what they actually are.
Okay, sure.
And how they fit into this whole, automation picture.
So think of a container like lightweight package for your application.
Right.
It bundles up all the code, the libraries, everything it needs to run,
right.
and it makes it super portable.
Okay.
You can move it between different environments without any compatibility headaches.
Gotcha.
And Docker is kind of like the king of the container world right now.
Okay, so it's a nice little package, easy to move around.
That's exactly.
But where does Ansible come in?
Ansible is your automation sidekick for everything Docker. You can build your container images using Ansible.
Oh, cool.
Start and stop containers, even run commands inside them.
Wait, hold on. So Ansible can manage what's running inside the container as well.
You got it. It's like automation inception.
That's wild.
Right. It opens up a ton of possibilities.
So I could build a container, use Ansible to like toss it up into the cloud,
yes.
and then have Ansible configure the app that's running inside that container.
All is part of one seamless workflow.
Mind blown.
It's powerful stuff. And this isn't some, pie in the sky idea. This is how a lot of modern applications are built and deployed. Ansible's the glue that holds it all together.
I'm starting to get the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
This isn't just about like scripting a few commands. This is like orchestrating these complex systems and workflows in a way that's repeatable, reliable.
Exactly. It's about taking control of your infrastructure and making it dance.
I like it. Now, realistically speaking, with all this power, there's got to be, a few caveats here.
Right. Well, of course, no tool is perfect.
Right.
One thing that's worth mentioning is that some Ansible modules, they might need extra Python libraries installed on the systems you're managing.
So not a deal breaker, but like a speed bump maybe?
Exactly. Something to be aware of. The book gives some good examples, like you might need the OpenStack's HJARC library for OpenStack or the Azure SDK for Azure.
Right.
But the good news is Ansible's flexible. You can often use the raw module to just directly execute commands on the target machine, so you can install those dependencies as part of your Ansible playbook.
Oh, okay. So it's less about hitting a brick wall and more about knowing how to navigate around those bumps in the road.
Exactly.
And I imagine with experience, those bumps get a little less intimidating.
Absolutely. You start to anticipate them and they become just part of the process.
Okay. Now, going back to network automation for a sec, we talked about how Ansible can, provide this common language for managing network devices. But realistically, not all devices are created equal when it comes to automation, are they?
That's a great point, and the book actually talks about this.
Okay.
It's true. Some devices are more automation-friendly than others.
Right.
Some are a little more, shall we say, resistant to change.
So what happens when you encounter one of those devices that's a bit, stubborn?
Right. So the book actually gives this example of F5 BIG IP load balancers, which are super common in a lot of data centers.
Right.
And they don't really have a traditional command line interface that you can access over SSH.
Oh, interesting.
They rely more on APIs and other more specialized interfaces.
So in those situations, does Ansible just throw in the towel?
Not at all. Ansible's adaptable, remember.
Okay.
And because those Ansible modules, they're written in Python, skilled developers can tap into those APIs directly.
Okay, so you can work around those limitations.
Exactly. It might take a bit more finesse, but Ansible can often find a way.
It's like the MacGyver of network automation.
There you go.
I like it.
But it's also important to remember that, Ansible strives for this unified approach.
Right.
But sometimes you do need to use the right tool for the job.
Right, right.
And for those devices that do have a good command line interface, the Ansible.net Common.Network Lead protocol is a game changer.
Yeah, we touched on that earlier, but it seems like something worth, revisiting, especially with network automation being so important.
Absolutely. So in the past, you'd often have to use different modules for each vendor, right?
Right.
Cisco had its own way of doing things. Juniper had its own thing.
Yep, it could get messy.
Total headache. But with Networkly, Ansible streamlines it all. You tell Ansible what kind of device it's talking to, like a Cisco switch or a Juniper router, and it handles the rest.
So less time deciphering cryptic vendor commands and more time actually focusing on the automation itself.
That's the goal.
That's a huge win for network engineers, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah. Huge time saver.
The book walks through an example using Cumulus Linux, which we talked about before.
Mm-hmm.
And since that's basically Linux for networking gear.
Right.
Does that mean it's extra friendly with Ansible?
Oh, yeah. Cumulus Linux is like Ansible's best friend because it's built on Linux.
Right.
Managing it with Ansible is a breeze. You can install packages, tweak configurations, you name it.
It's like the lines between servers and network devices. Mm-hmm. They're kind of blurring here, aren't they?
It's all just becoming compute resources, and Ansible can manage it all.
That's a good point, yeah. It's all just ones and zeros at the end of the day, right?
Exactly.
So I'm starting to see how this all fits together.
Yeah.
It's not just about automating individual tasks in isolation. It's about like this bigger picture of orchestrating workflows across your entire infrastructure.
You got it. And the book really equips you to do just that. It covers everything from the basics of configuration management to more advanced stuff like rolling deployments.
Rolling deployments? That sound interesting.
Yeah.
Especially for applications that, can't afford any downtime.
Right. Mission critical stuff. Okay. So imagine you've got a web app, right?
Okay.
Multiple servers behind a load balancer.
Yep.
A rolling deployment lets you update those servers one by one without taking the whole app offline.
Oh, okay.
So your users, they don't even notice a thing.
Seamless. I like it.
Exactly. And Ansible makes this super easy. You can tell it how many servers to update at a time.
Okay.
So you always have some healthy servers handling traffic.
So it's like this carefully choreographed dance.
That's a great way to put it.
Moving servers in and out of rotation.
Ansible's the choreographer, making sure everything runs smoothly.
Okay, I like that. Now, we've got to be realistic. Things don't always go perfectly right.
Of course not. This is IT. Things break.
Exactly. So when something goes wrong, how does Ansible help us recover from those situations?
Okay, so Ansible's got your back there, too.
Okay, good.
It's got all these built-in tools and techniques for handling errors.
Okay.
And one of the key concepts is the failed when condition.
Failed when? Okay.
Yeah, so it's all about defining very specific conditions for when a task should be marked as failed.
Okay.
Even if the command itself, technically worked.
So it's not just about whether the command ran. It's about whether it actually achieved what we wanted it to.
Exactly. It's about making sure that the outcome is what you expected.
That's clever.
Right. So you can catch potential issues early on before they become major headaches.
Okay, I like that. So you're saying Ansible gives us these really fine-grained controls over how we handle errors.
Exactly. You can be as strict or as lenient as you need to be.
So you've got options.
Options are always good. And the book goes into all sorts of other error handling techniques as well, like grouping tasks together into blocks, or even telling Ansible to just ignore errors for certain tasks.
If you're feeling brave.
Exactly. Sometimes you just got to live on the edge.
All right, so we've talked about error handling.
Right.
But the book also mentions loops.
Ah, loops, the bread and butter of automation.
Right. They bring back memories.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Of my programming days. Writing endless for loops.
Exactly. But Ansible's a little different.
Okay.
It's more about what you want to loop over.
Okay.
Less about the nitty-gritty details of writing the loop itself.
So it's a more declarative approach.
Exactly. You tell Ansible what you want, and it figures out how to make it happen.
Right.
The book has some good examples, like if you want to apply the same configuration to a bunch of servers, you can just give Ansible a list of servers and tell it to run the same tasks on each one.
That makes sense.
And that's where the real power of Ansible comes in. You're not just automating individual tasks anymore. You're automating patterns.
Right.
Which means you can scale your automation efforts like crazy.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So loops are really about, eliminating that repetitive work.
Exactly.
Making our lives easier, making our code cleaner.
Precisely. And it gets even better. Ansible supports nested loops.
Nested loops. Okay, now we're getting fancy.
I know, right?
When would you actually use a nested loop?
So let's say you have a group of web servers.
Okay. And
each server needs a bunch of user accounts created on it.
Right.
You could use a nested loop for that.
Okay.
The outer loop would go through each server,
right.
And the inner loop would create each user account on that server.
So you're automating the automation itself.
Pretty much. It's like Ansible Inception again.
Okay, this is blowing my mind a little bit.
But in a good way, right.
In a good way, yeah, exactly. It's exciting to see what Ansible can do.
Oh, yeah, it's a powerful tool.
Or I think this is a good place to take a quick break.
Sounds good.
We'll come back in just a moment and dive into even more Ansible goodness. All right, so before the break, we were getting a handle on how Ansible uses loops to automate all those tedious, repetitive tasks that we all hate.
Yeah, the stuff that makes you want to bang your head against the keyboard.
Exactly. But the book also talks about this concept of roles, which sounds like it takes organization and reusability to a whole nother level.
Roles are really where Ansible goes from being just a scripting tool to a full-blown automation framework.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So let's say you've got a bunch of tasks you need to do on a bunch of different servers.
Right, like a common configuration.
Exactly. Things like installing web servers, setting up databases, configuring security settings, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the bread and butter.
Instead of copying and pasting that code into every single playbook you write, you can bundle it all up into a reusable role.
So it's like creating your own custom Ansible building blocks.
Exactly. And roles are more than just grouping tasks. They have a specific structure with places for your variables, files, templates, all nicely organized.
So it's not just about code reuse, it's about bringing some sanity to the chaos.
Exactly. The book really emphasizes how important roles are when you're talking about enterprise environments.
Yeah, makes sense.
Because you might have huge configurations, and roles let you break them down into manageable chunks.
Right. Easier to understand, easier to troubleshoot, especially when you've got teams of people working on this stuff.
It's all about collaboration and maintainability.
So it's like having a shared language for automation.
Precisely. And it gets even more powerful because Ansible lets you create roles that depend on other roles.
Oh, okay. So now we're talking about like Ansible roles with prerequisites.
Exactly. Think of it like building a car. You've got your base car role.
Okay.
And then you can have more specialized roles like engine or transmission that depend on that base role.
That's really cool. So you can get very granular with your configurations.
Exactly. And you're not duplicating code. Everything stays nice and modular.
I like it. Now, with all this talk of custom roles and specialized configurations, it makes me wonder, is there a way to share these with other people? Or are we all just stuck reinventing the wheel over here?
That's where Ansible Galaxy comes in.
Ansible Galaxy.
Yeah, it's basically like a public repository for Ansible roles.
Oh, that's awesome.
People share their pre-built roles, so you don't have to start from scratch for everything.
So it's like a giant library of automation goodness.
Exactly. Need to set up a monitoring system. Chances are there's an Ansible role for that on Galaxy.
That's amazing. So you can leverage the collective knowledge of the Ansible community.
Exactly. It's one of the best things about Ansible, that spirit of sharing and collaboration.
It's really cool to see that kind of community around open source projects.
Absolutely.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, but realistically speaking, there's got to be a learning curve with a tool as powerful as Ansible, right?
There's always a learning curve with any new tool. But the good news is Ansible is designed to be human readable.
Okay, that's good to know.
Even if you're not a coding whiz, you can look at an Ansible playbook and kind of figure out what's going on.
That makes sense. But what about when things go wrong? Because we all know they eventually will.
Oh, absolutely.
How does Ansible help you troubleshoot those situations? Like when you need to figure out why something's not working the way it should.
Yeah. Debugging is super important, and the book does a great job of walking you through the tools and techniques.
Okay, good.
It covers things like verbose mode, so you can get more detailed output.
Okay.
There's the debug module, which lets you inspect variables while your playbook's running.
Oh, that's handy.
And even an interactive debugger.
An interactive debugger. That sounds pretty powerful.
It is. You can step through your code line by line, figure out exactly what's going on.
So you can really pinpoint those tricky issues.
Exactly. And the book even covers how to debug remote code, which is super helpful when your automation spans multiple machines.
So no matter how complex your Ansible setup gets, you've got the tools to troubleshoot it.
Exactly. You're never left out in the cold.
Well, I've got to say, I'm really impressed with Ansible. It's more than just a tool. It's a whole new way of thinking about IT automation.
I completely agree. It's about moving away from those manual, error-prone processes and embracing a more repeatable, reliable way of managing your infrastructure.
Exactly. Yeah. And this book, Mastering Ansible 4th edition, is a fantastic guide for anyone looking to make that transition.
It's packed with practical advice, real-world examples, and clear explanations, whether you're just starting out or you're already familiar with Ansible.
Absolutely. And we'll have links to the book and all the other resources we talked about in the show notes, so be sure to check those out.
And as you dive into the world of Ansible, remember, it's not just about automating tasks, it's about freeing yourself from those tedious, repetitive things that bog you down.
Exactly. It's about working smarter, not harder.
Precisely.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought. If you could automate just one thing in your current workflow using Ansible, what would it be? What's that one thing that's been driving you crazy that you wish you could just hand off to a robot? Think about it, let us know in the comments, and who knows, maybe we'll even cover it in a future episode. Until next time, happy automating.